Hey peeps, let's dive into the world of rear shocks by Rockshox, the heavy-duty trio of 2023. First things first, all three shocks are buddies in some way. When I say they're buddies, they share low-speed compression knobs, they all have 4 clicks of high and low-speed compression. We've got the Rockshox Vivid and Super Deluxe coil. Setting those two up is a breeze. The Super Deluxe Air, oh boy, it's like solving a puzzle with all the options. With 2 sets of tokens and 2 air cans, boy, you better know your stuff. If you're a big dude, that Super Deluxe coil might just be your soulmate. Enough with the technicalities, let's break it down later. For now, let's start with the Super Deluxe Air. Common, but a bit tricky to set up. It's got a funky bulge on it this time, that's for the progressive air can. If it doesn't have that bulge, that means it's a linear air can. Talking upgrades, the Super Deluxe coil got a sturdier build this time, fitting more bikes because of that thicker stanchion they equipped it with, and still providing a smooth ride, but hey, shock preference are as unique as favorite snacks. And then we got the Rockshox Vivid. It's the wild card. It's got a whole different vibe this time with an improved climb switch, and actually I've never rode the old one, but this one has a 34mm stanchion that'll make you feel like you're riding on a cloud. Let's not stress setup. The Vivid's a bit easier. It's all about the air tokens on this big boy, but hey, follow my setup guide and you'll be riding smoothly in no time. These shocks stick to the standard DU bushings from like 35 years ago. So if you're adding them to your bike, you may need a few tools to push them in. Alright, my top pick, Super Deluxe Ultimate Coil. It's a boss for heavier big guys like myself on big bikes. This big boy can handle hefty springs for the big boys like myself, giving a smoother ride than those chilled out air shocks. All 3 shocks here feature 4 clicks of both high and low speed compression. The marketing team at Rockshox demanded this, so they didn't look like a bunch of kids in front of Fox. But let's face the facts. You know the Rockshox guys, they're the ones who actually like to ride their bike, not turn the dials on it like Fox. Now, let's talk clicks. They love to brag about their 4 clicks of adjustment range, but buckle up folks. These clicks, they're like jumping from 0 to turbo in a flash. Starting from the softest setting and nudging 1 click forward feels like you've made a giant leap. 1 Rockshox click is like 7 from Fox. Alright, let's dive into the rebound range because, let's face it, clicks can get a bit wacky. The Super Deluxe Air now boasts 15 clicks, 5 more than the last generation. But even at my 220 pounds, it's still screaming dead slow on the rebound, making the ride quality less than thrilling. As for the Super Deluxe coil, I'm practically at a standstill. It's a miracle if I'm not cruising on dead slow rebound. And the Vivid with 20 clicks, once again, my weight and high shock pressure demands the slowest rebound, putting a real dent in my ride integrity. Are you under 200 pounds? Then you can ride any of these shocks and they're gonna be great. This is just for the big boys out there. If you're like 100 pounds, you're also going to run into the problem of the rebound being not fast enough. This is the price you have to pay for top performance straight out of the box. Picture the rebound range like a book. When you set the click, it's like using a bookmark. With Rockshox, it's like having 10 pages in a book. I'm always stuck on page 1, the slowest. If you're super light, you might be stuck on page 10. To change the rebound range, you need to open the shock. That's about $300. Speaking to like 5 different shock tuners, I found one competent one. He told me I could change the shim stack in both air shocks, or he can change the oil to make a different feel on the trail. Now, he also told me don't waste your time and just buy a coil if you're over 200 pounds. Let's break it down. These shocks I'm eyeballing are basically aftermarket goodies. Imagine snagging one from the store and guess what? They come with a shock tune called LL, which stands for linear low progression or something. Now, I'm no shock guru, but having one of these bad boys that comes on your bike could possibly give you a completely different experience. The shock tuner also informed me the LL tune is very underwhelming for almost everyone out there. Having experienced tuned shocks and untuned shocks, tuning a shock is like adding makeup. If it's not good underneath, it's still not that good, but it does hide the problem. Now, one feature that's not all marketing is the hydraulic bottom out. That purple knob on the Rockshox Vivid is absolutely amazing. Crank that thing up and you can leave the compression wide open and get the poppiest ride you've ever been on. Unfortunately, the Super Deluxe Air does not come with hydraulic bottom out in its aftermarket edition. I was so happy to see that all 3 shocks still have sag indicators. This is vitally important on the coil shock because setting the sag on coil shocks can be pretty difficult. This is the absolute best entry-level coil shock you can get. Or if you don't like to spend half your life setting your shock up like a Fox guy. Let me spill the beans on my personal experience on all 3 shocks, kicking it off with my top pick. The Rockshox Super Deluxe coil, it's like a regular coil shock. Shocking, right? If you've ever been on an old Rockshox coil in the past, this one's just a bit jazzed up in terms of feel. The damping's slightly better, but like I said, you'll not be scrubbing love letters about it. However, the added hydraulic bottom out does make setup easier and giving a nice cushy feel at the end of the stroke. Plus, that naturally slower rebound of the Super Deluxe coil vibes perfectly with my over 220 pound physique. Trust me, if you're in that weight class, this is your wingman. It might sacrifice a bit of bounce, like most coil shocks do, except for the EXT, those Italian suspension wizards, but that's another video. But hey, no complaints here, I drop a Super Deluxe coil on any of my bikes. Oh, did I mention it's budget friendly, major selling point. And those air seals, gone, making this shock more reliable. The Rockshox Vivid, she's the standout of the crew, a bit of a unicorn on the trail. She's that big, fat air shock buddy who stays cool under all circumstances. Plus, she'll give you as much pop as any regular size air shock. But here's the kicker, all that pop comes at a cost. She tends to lose a bit of traction when things get really bonkers. You can expect a fade-free performance from the Rockshox Vivid due to that massive air can. The aftermarket Vivid struggles with high pressures due to that narrow range of rebound, so heavy riders beware. Get the tokens wrong and you'll feel like you're on a hardtail. Don't put the tokens in, you'll feel like you're on a Fox shock that's not set up right. Wrapping it up, let's talk about the Rockshox Super Deluxe Air. To put it mildly, it's the underperformer of the bunch. They really should have hit the reset button and given this one a complete overhaul. If you snag this one aftermarket, comes with the linear air can. That's just not exciting. My first go on the linear air can was a total letdown. Rockshox missed the mark on this shock, to be perfectly frank. I had to get a progressive air can from Ukraine, of all places. It's like the only spot on earth that had one. After fitting the progressive air can, at least it could compete against the Fox Float X. I had to pump the shock to 330 PSI after fitting the progressive air can, which messed up the rebound. Seems like it's tuned for riders 140 to 190 pounds. If you're in that range, ignore what I'm saying. If you're the type of guy who doesn't fuss with gear, this shock might not bother you. Now, all 3 of these shocks, they're like looking at 3 people at a party and you're like, yeah, they're related. They're very similar. Now, the real question, how does it compare to Fox? Well, that's a whole other video, so click that one on the screen now.